I want to share a testimony about how I went to hell after taking a gummy. I wanted to share the testimony before, but I was like, I don't know if this is going to make sense because it was a gummy. I ran across somebody video the other day and they were talking about their experiences with that and how they went to hell. And when I heard his testimony, nothing in me was like, oh, well, this testimony needs to be scratched out because he took a gummy. I still felt the same anointing. I still felt the same about it. Then I felt like that was confirmation that I can share mine. And this happened a couple of years back, maybe a few years back. I had taken a gummy, but I thought it was one of those. I thought it was like they have THC, but then they have the other kind of gummy where it's more like a natural herb. It doesn't have the THC in there. I guess cannabis. I don't know what they call them, but anyway, I thought it was more natural, something that you can get over the counter in Texas. And I took one and it was good. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take two because I didn't read the directions. It didn't say anything about don't take that. So I just took both of them. And so I dozed off. Well, when I woke up, I started feeling very weird. Needless to say, I called 911 on myself and I was like, y'all need to come and get me because I'm feeling really weird. I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't trust myself. So, ambulance came and then I was like, okay, never mind. You can go home because now I don't trust y'all. Now I thought everybody was an enemy. I was like, now I don't trust y'all, so y'all can just go home. So then they left. And then I started feeling paranoid again because I was in this house and it was nighttime. And I don't know, I was just thinking weird things. And then I called them back. When I called them back, the second time they came, they was like, "Oh no, you're gonna go because now you're doing too much. Like you're gonna go." I got in the ambulance. I remember my mind going in and out, like I was going to different dimensions. I don't know what I was doing, but like mine was going in and out. So, say for example, say the ride to the hospital is 30 minutes. Within those 30 minutes, I would go from I know where I'm at. I'm in the ambulance. This is really happening. To then I will go into another world and I wouldn't know what was going on. And I would snap in and out like the whole time. And I remember the two ambulance drivers saying, this is very normal. People who take this type of stuff. And I was like, what type of stuff? And that's when they was like, you took some THC. And I was like, oh, snap. And they was like, it'll go down, but this is just the ride that it takes you on or whatever. And I was like, okay. Okay. So then we get to the hospital and I remember them saying, again, you're just high. You need to this is literally what the doctor was like. You need to just enjoy the ride and not make yourself so nervous or whatever. Calm yourself down and it'll wear off. Drink some milk or water. I forgot what he said, but he was like, it'll wear down. So anyway, they tell me you need to just have somebody come pick you up. You should just go home and go to sleep. So then I remember going to the waiting room. So at this moment, the high was coming down. And that's why I feel like my testimony is I felt like I should share this because at the time that I experienced that, I was not as high as I was when I got to the hospital. First happened when I first called the ambulance. So this is probably like span over a couple of hours. So I remember the high was starting to come down, but again, if anybody ever took a gummy, you go in and out. But I remember that the more I was going out became less and less. And so I started being aware of my surroundings. I knew that I was in the house. I knew I was in the hospital. I knew I was in the waiting room. So I was coming down off this high. And then all of a sudden, I remember sitting in the waiting room. And the next thing I know, like a blink of an eye, I started feeling really weird. And I was just like, okay, you got to find something to know that's real. Because at this point, nothing felt real. I felt like I was slipping out of this dimension or something. So like, you got to find something to know that it's real. And then I kept looking at the clock. I was like, I don't know how to explain this part, but I was like, if I find something to know that it's real, I can hone in on that and then I won't keep slipping or whatever I was doing. And then the next thing I know, I was in a tunnel. And this tunnel, I was going down this tunnel and I was going back first. So it's almost like in my chair In the chair that I was sitting in, I was in one of those little waiting room chairs, but the chair was up against the wall. So it's almost like the chair had tipped backwards and I tipped with it. And I was like literally just, dang, how do I describe this? It was like dang, it was like he brought hell to me. I don't know, because when my chair went, I don't know if the chair went back, but that's how I felt. I know I was going back. And so as I was going back, this tunnel, it was jet black, but it was like the jet black tunnel that felt like it was going all the way down. And then I remember seeing like lava, like fire. It wasn't fire, but it was like I saw like, I guess, flames of sparks of fire. It was jet black, but it was still like flames of sparks of fire, of something like that. And I remember going down, and I remember screaming. But I remember being very alert. And at the time in my life, this was like years back. At the time in my life, the stuff that I was doing, I was in a backsliding state, and I talked about that in my previous video about fornicating. So this was around the time when I was fornicating. At the time, so when I was going down this tunnel, every sin, everything that I was doing at that moment, I was aware of. Like this thing shaking. I think I'm holding my phone. I guess it's shaking. But everything that I was doing, I was aware of. And I remember thinking that the whole time. And I was like, oh my God, this is real. Oh my God, I'm going to hell. And I just kept saying, this is real. This is real. I'm going to hell. Like, then I started thinking about all the stuff that I was doing. And then again, the same thing in my previous experiences, it was all telepathically. And I was trying to telepathically repent. I was trying to telepathically tell Jesus, please get me out of here. And I remember me saying, this is real. And the whole time I'm still falling. I never stopped falling. It was like I'm still going in this black hole. And the more I was going in this black hole, the more sins I was thinking about, the things that I was doing at that time. And then I was saying it was real telepathically while going down this dark hole. But in real life, I was saying it's real because I heard myself screaming. It's real. Literally, I was screaming in the hospital. It's real. Hell is real. And then, right at that moment, while I was doing the screaming, my fiance came and he was like, hey, what are you doing? He was like shaking me. He shook me out of whatever I was in. And I was like, it's real. Hell is real. Like, I was going nuts. And he was just like, he was embarrassed because when he walked into the hospital, he said he heard somebody screaming, saying it's real, but he never thought it would have been me. So then he was like, said he asked the receptionist lady, Tisha, he gave my first and last name, and they were like, they pointed over there, like the girl over there that's screaming. So when he turned the corner and saw me, he said that my legs were like in the air and my arms was like in the air, like I was kicking, trying to get out of somewhere in this chair. So whatever I was doing in that dimension, it was showing this realm. And what he was witnessing was me falling into hell. I cannot make this up. This blew my mind because at that point I was like, it's so real. The spiritual world is so real. You experience it for yourself. You have no idea how real it can get. And then it's also like the dimensions. We're not, there's so many, and this is another topic, but we can go, there's dimensions and there's layers to this thing because I felt like he brought it to me. I don't know why. I felt like hell was in the hospital. I don't know. I can't explain that. I don't know because, and the only reason I said it is because I was like, felt like my chair was going back. I felt like he put me in hell just as I was, with the chair, with the everything on. Like I remember I had on like a little dress, and it was a striped dress, and I had on some leopard mule slides. I remember how I had my hair, I had braids, I had a sweater cardigan on. I remember everything I had on that night, and I remember all of that I had on, but I was still like back going down. And I also was wondering, I was like, if he would have never came in and woke me out of that, where would it happen? Would I have finally went down there? I don't know. But the thing that stuck to me was that I was alert to everything that I did in real time. And I've mentioned this before in other testimonies, but it's always been consistent. Been to hell before, but but I went to hell when I went to hell itself like I was 16 or 17 years old, a different way. This was something completely different. I was in an awakened state. So it was almost like I was awake. I was sitting there, and then all of a sudden, next thing I went somewhere else. Another thing that I mention about that is that it when you're going down this dark tunnel, and this has happened before, where it's super dark, but yet you can see what's going on. And I remember hearing things like stuff. I don't know if I heard screams or demons or screeching. I just felt very demonic and very you could tell that you were separated from the presence of God. Um yeah, is my experience with it. So then after that, I never touched anything like that again. I won't even take a CBD. That's what it's called, CBD. I won't even take a CBD boot from them. Out to your mind, yeah, understand all of that, but at the same time, God will use any situation for something else. So don't count out the fact that I took a gummy that is why that happened. No, because again, I was going down. Regardless, when I got out of whatever was in, I still had the reverence of the Lord, and I still knew, Tish, you need to get yourself together because hell is absolutely real. So regardless of how I got there, I went there. So I just thought I'd share that with y'all, and I'm gonna try to be more consistent in making videos. I have lots of experiences that I didn't tell all on my original testimony video with Amy. So there may be some things that I talk about that I never talked about before. It's just whenever I get the courage to talk about it, or if the Lord say share that. So talk to y'all later. Bye.